Welcome to the Vibes Lab, your front row seat to the science behind VIA, the Vibes AI agentic platform making everyday brain health accessible to all. Every episode is designed to reveal insights that will enhance your cognitive health and well-being. Follow us to grab your lab key and experience limitless intelligence.
If I told you that mindlessly humming along to the radio in the shower is actually this incredible biological hack that acts as a vasodilator for your brain, you'd probably call me crazy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like complete internet pseudoscience.
Right. But modern neuroscience is actually proving that sound isn't just, something we process for entertainment. It's a physical force that physically edits our biology. So, welcome into this custom-tailored deep dive, prepared specifically for you, the learner.
We know you're insanely curious about how we work, how we age, and, well, how we can optimize both of those things.
Exactly. So today, our mission is to investigate a very specific question. Can sound, just entirely on its own, physically change the biology of how we think and feel?
What's fascinating here is that to answer that, it requires us to look way past the usual wellness aesthetics. I mean, for a long time, the conversation around sound and healing has been somewhat abstract, right?
Yeah, like we know humans have used drums and chants and singing bowls for thousands of years to just sort of settle the nervous system.
Right, but we are moving past philosophy now. We are looking at hard, measurable biology today. Specifically, we're focusing on an excerpt from the book Resonant Minds, The Science of Restorative Audiotherapy, and we're also looking at the release of this new clinical-grade sound therapy track called Lasting Light, which was developed by Vibes AI.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really understand how a track like Lasting Light actually works, we have to first look at the brain's internal metronome. Like, depending on what you're doing, sleeping, relaxing, focusing, your brain produces these different signature electrical rhythms. And the absolute fastest, most demanding of those rhythms are the gamma waves.
Precisely. So gamma waves fire at around 40 cycles per second, which we refer to as 40 hertz.
Which is incredibly fast.
It is. It's so fast. Gamma activity is essentially the biological signature of your brain doing its absolute heaviest lifting. When you're holding a complex thought or encoding a new memory or, trying to weave a bunch of different sensory details into one cohesive experience, that is gamma at work.
And I imagine it takes a lot of juice to keep that up.
Oh, massive amounts of cellular energy. It takes a ton of energy to maintain that rhythm.
But there's a critical problem that happens as we age, right? And it becomes, especially pronounced in conditions like Alzheimer's disease. That gamma activity weakens. The 40 hertz rhythm just starts to get sloppy.
Yeah, sloppy is a good word for it.
I always like to think of the brain's gamma waves as the conductor of an orchestra. So when that 40 hertz rhythm starts to fade, the string section is suddenly playing at a completely different tempo than the brass section. The music gets loose, and the timing across different regions of the brain just starts to drift.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. And, it raises a brilliantly simple question, which was asked by a team at MIT led by Dr. Li-Hui Tsai. They basically wondered, well, if this 40 hertz rhythm fades as memory and cognition fade, what would happen if we just artificially put it back?
It's like, could we literally force the brain to sync up again?
Exactly. Could we just hand the conductor the baton back?
And the way they tested this is so fascinating to me because they didn't even start with sound, did they?
No, they didn't. In 2016, they actually started with light. They took mice that had these Alzheimer's-like brain changes, specifically this buildup of amyloid plaques, and they put them in a room with a light that was flickering at exactly 40 hertz for 1 hour.
1 hour of just a flickering light.
Just 1 hour. And the results genuinely shocked the neuroscience field. That single hour of 40 hertz flickering light caused those amyloid plaques to literally start clearing out.
Wow.
Yeah. And the mechanism of how it happened is the real breakthrough here. It basically comes down to the brain's immune cells, which are known as microglia.
Okay, so the microglia, they're like the janitors, right?
Right. Think of them as the brain's janitorial staff. In a healthy brain, they just cruise around eating debris and dead cells. But in Alzheimer's, they get sluggish, they get inflamed, and they basically stop cleaning.
So the 40 hertz light fixed that.
It acted like an alarm clock. It physically jolted the microglia out of their dormant state and shifted them right back into an active cleanup mode.
Okay, so the light physically changed the biology of a neurodegenerative condition. That's wild. But obviously we're talking about restorative audio today. So how does this light experiment translate over to sound?
Well, in 2019, that same MIT lab tried the experiment again, but this time they used 40 hertz audio clicks. They played them for an hour a day over several weeks, and the effects were actually even more profound.
More than the light.
Yeah, because sound waves process differently than visual input. So the benefits spread much further into the brain, reaching these deep regions like the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. The mice actually performed significantly better on memory tests. The researchers even coined a term for it, GENIUS, which stands for gamma entrainment, using sensory stimulation.
Okay, but curing mice is one thing, Translating that to actual human biology is usually where these things completely fall apart.
That's usually the case, yes. But a 2022 human trial at Massachusetts General Hospital and MIT actually took this to the next level. They took patients with mild Alzheimer's dementia and delivered this combined audiovisual 40 hertz stimulation over several weeks.
And what did they find?
When they looked at the MRIs, the treated group showed less brain shrinkage in crucial regions, and their cognitive performance actually held steady compared to the control group.
Held steady. That's huge for Alzheimer's.
It is. Now, researchers are careful to note that the sample sizes were small, but they confidently call it a really strong biological signal worth investigating. And there's actually a parallel line of research led by Dr. Lee Bartell at the University of Toronto that expands on this. He shows that when we deliver this 40 hertz frequency, we don't necessarily have to limit it to just what we can hear through our ears.
Wait, what? If we're treating cognitive decline or motor issues, just hearing a sound in your ears doesn't seem like it would be enough to reach the rest of the body anyway. Are they, physically vibrating people with these frequencies?
Exactly, they are. It's called vibroacoustic therapy. So low-frequency sound is delivered through a specialized chair or a mat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you don't just hear the 40 hertz. Your skeleton and your tissues physically feel the vibration. Dr. Bartell's team found that this vibroacoustic stimulation leads to cognitive improvements, sure, but it also shows incredible benefits for the physical motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease and even the chronic pain associated with fibromyalgia.
Okay, so 40 hertz audio works great for the brain's electrical rhythms, and then physical vibration helps the body. But, the brain doesn't exist in a vacuum. It relies on the whole cardiovascular system to supply it with oxygen and nutrients. If your body's stressed out and blood isn't flowing properly, just tweaking the brain's metronome probably isn't going to do much. So how does sound actually interact with our internal plumbing?
Right. That brings us to the body's parasympathetic highway, which is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve runs from your brainstem down through your chest, winding through your heart and your lungs into your abdomen, and then back up again. It is basically the biological brake pedal for your nervous system.
Meaning it controls our rest and digest mode.
Right. When your vagus nerve has good tone, your heart rate slows down, your breathing gets deeper, and your body stops pumping out stress hormones. Crucially, this creates the exact biological conditions your brain needs to repair and remodel itself.
And if the tone is bad?
Conversely, low vagal tone means you're locked in a sympathetic fight or flight state. Your blood vessels are constricted, and neuroplasticity basically grinds to a halt.
And researchers measure this using heart rate variability, right?
Yeah.
HRV. The logic here has always been really interesting to me. You'd think a healthy heart beats perfectly evenly, just like a metronome.
You think so, yeah.
But a healthy, relaxed nervous system actually produces a gently irregular heartbeat, making these constant tiny millisecond adjustments to your environment. So high HRV means your parasympathetic system is driving. Better emotional regulation, better brain plasticity. Lower HRV means rigid stress and inflammation.
Exactly. And low-frequency sound is just incredibly effective at shifting your HRV in the right direction. Clinical trials looking at Himalayan singing bowls have repeatedly proven this.
Singing bowls?
Yeah. In Landry's 2014 study, just a 12-minute session of listening to these resonant, low-frequency bowls dropped blood pressure and heart rate significantly more than a directed relaxation meditation did.
Just 12 minutes.
Yeah, and later studies like Trivedi and Sabu in 2019 and Panchal in 2020, they stretched that to longer sessions and found consistent, measurable positive shifts in HRV alongside these dramatic drops in physical tension and fatigue.
Okay, I understand that hearing a relaxing sound lowers my heart rate. I get that. But what is actually happening at the microscopic level? How does an invisible sound wave tell a physical blood vessel to relax?
Okay, the cellular messenger for this entire process is a molecule called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is your body's primary signaling molecule for vasodilation, which really just means opening up the blood vessels.
Okay.
So when nitric oxide is released, it relaxes the inner muscles of your blood vessels, causing them to widen. This increases vital cerebral blood flow, which your brain desperately needs to maintain plasticity and clear out waste.
And sound physically triggers the release of this molecule. I saw Dr. John Bouthiel's research documented that when you place tuning forks directly on bone and connective tissue, the physical vibration travels through the body's structural network and produces a measurable spike in cellular nitric oxide.
Yep. The vasodilation cascade follows right after that. But, the most accessible version of this mechanism actually goes back to your intro.
The shower humming.
The shower humming.
Or-
Research from Weitzberg and Lenberg back in 2002 proved that simple human humming increases the levels of nasal nitric oxide by an astonishing amount compared to just quiet, normal breathing.
Okay, I have to stop you there because a 15-fold increase sounds like a made-up marketing statistic. What is actually happening in the human sinus cavity to produce a 15-fold spike from just mindlessly humming a tune?
I know, it sounds totally unbelievable, but the physics are actually quite straightforward. Your paranasal sinuses naturally produce nitric oxide. When you hum, you create these rapid air oscillations. Essentially, the air vibrates intensely inside those cavities.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so this physical vibration acts almost like a vacuum. It rapidly pulls the accumulated nitric oxide out of the sinus tissues and into your airway. From there, it gets carried down into your lungs and diffuses directly into your bloodstream, where it immediately starts dilating your blood vessels.
That's amazing.
There's even a recent randomized trial by Gotti in 2021 where patients with hypertension practiced a bee-humming breathing exercise, and the resulting nitric oxide release successfully lowered their blood pressure and shifted their HRV.
Wait, so my shower humming habit is literally a cardiovascular intervention?
It is a fantastic, completely free biological tool for general relaxation and vasodilation. However, we do have to draw a line here.
Fair enough.
Because if you're looking to achieve very specific cognitive outcomes like intense focus or targeted memory consolidation or deeply restorative sleep simple humming just isn't going to cut it, your brain's electrical rhythms require much more precise stimulation to actually shift states. And that brings us to the science of brainwave entrainment.
Right, and this is exactly where we need to separate the rigorous science from the internet wellness hype. Because anyone who has searched for a focus playlist on YouTube has probably seen ads for binaural beats promising to turn them into a literal genius.
Mm-hmm.
How does this entrainment actually work on a neurological level?
So the foundational neuroscience is called the auditory steady-state response. And the mechanism is beautifully simple. When a sound wave hits your ear, your auditory cortex translates it into an electrical signal. If that sound is a steady rhythmic pulse, the surrounding neurons literally begin firing in time with it.
They sync up.
Exactly. The brain matches its electrical activity to the rhythm of the sound it's processing.
And audio engineers have figured out three main ways to deliver this pulse to the listener, right?
Mm.
First, you have binaural beats. This is where a slightly different frequency is played into each ear, meaning it absolutely requires headphones to work. Like, if you play 400 hertz in the left ear and 410 hertz in the right, the brain hears the difference, 10 hertz, and creates an auditory illusion, basically trying to sync its brain waves to that 10 hertz beat.
Right. That's the most famous one.
Then second, you have isochronic tones. This is just a single tone that is physically pulsed on and off at a target frequency. The huge benefit here is that it works perfectly well over normal room speakers.
Yeah.
No headphones required.
Exactly.
And finally, there are monaural beats, where two different frequencies are combined in the audio file itself before it ever even reaches your ear, creating a natural pulsating beat.
You nailed it. But the pressing question in the medical community hasn't really been whether the brain syncs up. We know it does on an EEG. The real question is whether this entrainment actually produces lasting, measurable effects on cognition or mood.
Right. Does it actually do anything useful?
Exactly. To answer that, we have to look at these massive meta-analyses that pool data from dozens of clinical trials. For example, Garcia-Argebay's 2019 pool of 22 studies, or the work by Chaib in 2015 and Ingendo in 2023. And the consensus across these huge reviews is that, yes, entrainment does produce statistically significant effects on memory, attention, anxiety reduction, and even pain perception.
Wait, I'm looking at the data here, and the researchers consistently describe the effect sizes as modest. And the study quality varies wildly depending on who is actually running the trial. If the effects are modest, isn't there a huge risk that a lot of this is just a fancy placebo effect dressed up as neuroscience? Like someone puts on headphones, they expect to focus, and so they focus.
That is a very fair critique. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, that honesty is actually the strongest feature of this research. Acknowledging that the effects are modest is exactly what separates clinical-grade restorative audio from pure wellness aesthetics.
Because it's grounded in reality.
Exactly. The biological signal is undeniably real. But because the brain is so incredibly complex, the audio has to be engineered with absolute precision to consistently trigger those mechanisms. Modest effects in clinical data just mean the tool works, but it isn't magic. It requires the right frequency for the exact right problem.
Which means we need to know what frequencies actually do what.
Right, and the data shows very clear lanes. Delta entrainment, which pulses between 1 and 4 hertz, shows really strong evidence for improving sleep onset because it mimics the brain's deepest resting state.
Makes sense.
Then theta and low alpha ranges from 4 to 10 hertz, those are well supported for anxiety reduction. The beta range, 15 to 30 hertz, has mixed but generally positive effects on active attention. And then, of course, the gamma range at 40 hertz and above has the absolute strongest clinical case for driving cognitive plasticity and clearing out that cellular debris.
Which brings us to the grand finale of our deep dive. We have these 3 distinct biological mechanisms, right? The 40 hertz direct brain route that clears out plaques, the vagus nerve and nitric oxide pathway that dilates blood vessels, and the auditory steady-state response that forces the brain into specific rhythms. The Vibes AI team took all of this complex data and basically synthesized it into a single practical audio product called Lasting Light. How do you combine all of this without it just turning into a chaotic, unlistenable mess?
Honestly, it is a masterclass in evidence-based audio design. They engineered the track to hit every single biological pathway we just discussed. So to address the direct brain route, the core of the track relies heavily on gamma range entrainment to support cognitive resilience and sync up those neural rhythms.
But they didn't stop at the brain.
No, they didn't. To engage the body's cardiovascular highway, they layered in lower frequency foundations and somatic vibrational anchoring.
Which hits the vagus nerve.
Exactly. It engages the vagus nerve and triggers that physical resonance needed for nitric oxide release. They even set the musical tempo of the track to around 60 beats per minute, specifically to support cardiac entrainment and gently slow the listener's heart rate.
And in terms of how it's delivered, they opted primarily for an isochronic delivery method, right?
Yeah.
The pulsing is built directly into the tone, meaning you can just play it out loud on your living room speakers while you read or work, and your brain will still physically entrain to the rhythm.
Right, though they did seamlessly weave in binaural pairing just in case the listener prefers to use headphones.
There's one design choice in Lasting Light that really stood out to me. The creators deliberately built moments of complete silence into the audio track. Logically, with all this intense multi-layered stimulation, the gamma waves, the isochronic pulses, the 60 beats per minute pacing, wouldn't the brain just get completely overwhelmed? Is that why the deliberate silences are there, so the nervous system isn't just constantly being hammered by data?
That is exactly why. You cannot force neuroplasticity in a state of exhaustion. The brain requires physical space and time to absorb and integrate the biological cascade that the sound just initiated.
Right, you need time to process.
Exactly. Think about what you're triggering. You are commanding increased cerebral blood flow, you're shifting microglia into an active cleanup mode, you're releasing nitric oxide into the bloodstream. The deliberate silence is the space where the actual biological repair work happens without interference.
It is such a thoughtful approach. And there's a real poetry to how they presented it to the public, too. I noticed Lasting Light was released on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. The creators noted that it represents the light that lasts for the Earth and the cognitive plasticity that can last across a lifetime for the brain.
It's beautiful. And every single element of the track is a direct translation of clinical research into an audio decision. It's designed from the ground up to engage synchronized neural rhythms, maximize cerebral blood flow, lower systemic inflammation, maintain healthy vagal tone, and just keep your microglia engaged.
It fundamentally reframes how we should think about aging, because the most important takeaway for you listening right now is that your brain does not just have an expiration date where it randomly stops adapting. It remains plastic well into late life. You keep learning, you keep adapting, and you keep becoming. And the incredible thing is that you no longer have to just hope your brain stays sharp. You now have accessible, scientifically backed biological tools to actively tune it.
We've spent this deep dive exploring how highly curated, mathematically precise frequencies can literally heal your brain cells, clear out plaque, and dilate your blood vessels. But looking at the sheer power of auditory input raises a really important question. If highly engineered good sound can physically heal us, What is the constant, chaotic, low-quality background noise of model life? The sirens, the notification pings, the compressed audio doing to our long-term cognitive health.
Man, that is a heavy but incredibly necessary thought to leave on. If sound is a physical force, we need to be very mindful of what we're letting into our ears. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the science of restorative audio. Maybe take a moment today to go for a walk, do a little bit of deep humming in the shower, and just enjoy a moment of deliberate silence. Until next time, keep learning.